Hi guys and welcome back to the Mighty Blues. My name is of course Cameron and welcome back today to another live stream. As you can see, we are joined by Corney today and we are going to sit down and talk about the latest Everton transfer rumours. We've had all of the talk about the board over the last couple of days and that will not stop until the board is removed, certainly from my stance anyway, because I think it's really important that we continue to push this feeling of frustration and anger towards the board, and it's important that we don't allow it to, be swept under the carpet and forgotten about, because we do need serious change at this football club, and I won't stop saying that until it happens. But we've spoken about the board, we've spoken about, the games of football and Frank Lampard and his job and his security and stuff, so I thought, you know what, let's talk about some transfer news. Let's talk about some players Everton have been linked with. And let's talk about a subject that could actively change our season. The board, we all know they need to be removed. We all know they're not good enough. We all know they're completely, done for me now at Everton Football Club, and many people would say the same about Frank Lampard, but the reality of the situation is if Everton are to survive this season again and remain in the Premier League next season, we are going to need some investment in this January transfer window, and that of course means new players coming in. So I thought we'd sit down and talk about some of the players that we've been linked with over the course of the last few days. We're joined by Corney, of course. If you haven't seen Corney before, then you are obviously new to this channel. Corney's been on a number of times, an Evertonian from over in South Africa, and we've spoken many a times during the 5 years of this channel. We've spoken about Carlo Ancelotti and Everton being good at footy, to Rafa Benitez and Everton being awful at footy, and now we're talking about, Everton still being awful at footy. So nothing much has changed there. Before we get into any transfer news and updates and rumours, how you feeling, mate? How's things, and how you feeling generally about the football club at the moment?
Thanks, Cam. Thanks for welcoming back. Like I mentioned to you off air, it's quite depressing. Like, you don't know, we don't know really what to do anymore in terms of. I think last season took its toll on us in terms of getting the team through it, and I would say optimism for this season. But after the transfer window and the first few games being average, I guess it's we didn't really know what to expect. But the last month and all, the last 2 months, a month prior to the World Cup, and now this last month has just took its toll. I don't know. Evertonians are tired. They I don't know, are we gonna get through the season like last season, because I don't know if people have it in them to fight it out like they did last season.
Well, that's exactly the point, isn't it? And I think really interestingly, you said there you don't know whether people have got it in them to fight it out. And obviously, we saw on Saturday in the Southampton game. Before the Southampton game, there was a coach welcoming, despite the fact that some media outlets have labelled it as intimidating and fans frustration and this, that, and the other. It wasn't. It was exactly what it was. Last season when we did it before Chelsea, it was exactly what it was last season before we did it before Palace. It was a welcoming of the coach to try and give the players a boost and show a solidarity and show a backing of the team and the manager, because that's what the lead up to the Southampton game always was. It always was, we will be doing a sit-in after the game to show our frustration towards the board. However, during that 90 minutes and prior to that 90 minutes, it's all about getting behind the team and getting behind the manager. And listen, Frank Lampard has come out on numerous occasions previous and said about how important those coach welcomes were and how great they were for the players and the atmosphere and the mood within the dressing room. So, they can't come out now and say, oh no, we don't like it, it's intimidating, because last season they liked it and it worked well. And as I said, I'm a big believer in the fact that the fans kept Everton up last season, and I agree with you. I don't know how much of that will go on again, because I don't know how many of those fans that were there before every game, an hour and a half before, in the rain or the wind or whatever it may be, and those fans that went down to Finch Farm on a Tuesday afternoon to see the players out if we were playing Watford away, for example. I don't know how many of those fans will have the energy to do that again, given, we were in at such a dangerous position last season. We managed to get out of it, and we all sort of sat here and went, right, lessons need to be learned now, and we need to make changes so that we're not in that position again in 12 months' time. And here we are, fast forward 12 months' time, and we're arguably in a worse position than what we were last season. So you're right, I don't know whether that will continue to happen. I don't know whether fans' frustrations will turn, in a different manner. And obviously, we've saw over the last week or so that the club's board and the owner have completely turned against us, and as Ian Wright quite rightly said yesterday, have thrown us under the bus and effectively started some form of strange civil war against its own fans, by the way, who are the best in the world, and as I said, the reason as to why this club is still a Premier League side. But anyway, we'll park that chat for a moment. I do want to have you on at some point over the course of the next week or so to talk more about the board in depth and your feelings on that and where this club needs to go in the immediate future. But we'll talk about the immediate future, and that is the transfer window. We're currently on the 18th of January. Everton haven't had anything go on, being no business whatsoever. In the last week or so, we've had recurring names, and by that what I mean is that is a slight bit of progress, because before last week we didn't have anybody we were linked with, really. The odd name here and there, but the odd name was also being linked with every other Premier League team, so it made no difference. We're now getting names that are recurring and are coming up in different media outlets and are quite obvious that Everton are looking at, whether it be Zapata, whether it be Moussa Dembélé, whether it be Ryan Fraser. We're going to have a little talk about them all today.
But to be honest, it's a bit of a joke. Sorry to interrupt you. The fact that we now on the 18th of January, I swear, had we drawn a game here or won a game there, I wouldn't be surprised if we would have gone through this window with the same team.
Yeah.
So I think they literally scratching their heads trying to find someone, and no one really wants to come here in the first place, because we are a shit show and a joke of a club.
Yeah.
And not the fans, obviously. That team is dead awful. I think we passed the point of saying that this team doesn't show a heart or desire, or which is they don't, but they're just clearly not good enough. These players are dog shite. The players that we had 2 years ago when we actually did all right, they've been removed from the team, and now the average players are late. Our best player, our biggest goal threat is Alex Iwobi and Damari Gray.
Mm-hmm.
Both of them we wanted out of the team a season or two ago. I'm not trying to sound, but it's just a bit of a joke.
No.
I can't deal with this shit anymore.
I agree. I agree, and I've frequently said on this channel about players like Damari Gray, and I've had a go or I've criticised him, and people have said, "Oh, you can't criticise him, Cam. He's our top goal scorer. He's our best player." And I said, "But that's exactly why I can criticise him, because it's very clear that he isn't good enough. He's inconsistent. He'll pop up every now and then with the odd worldie like he did against Manchester City, but then he'll have a game like he did against Southampton where he might work hard, but he doesn't manage to successfully take anybody on. He doesn't create any chance. He doesn't get any real effort at goal off. And yes, okay, he might be our best player and he might be our highest goal scorer at the moment, but that doesn't automatically mean that he's good enough. And you're right, this team is full of players that simply aren't good enough. It's full of players that, whether or not they work hard, whether or not they want to fight for the manager, whether or not another manager could get a little bit more out of them in terms of a boost in their self-confidence, whatever it may be, the reality is, the be-all and end-all is, technically they're not good enough. We find ourselves in a position, and certainly I find myself in a position as an Evertonian, where I used to remember transfer windows in years gone by, even most recently in last summer or the summer before, where Everton would be linked with players and you'd sort of, for one reason or another, go, "Oh, I don't want him because he's 30 odd years old and he's got a bad injury record," or "I don't want him, stay away from him, he's not good enough," or "He's not this, he's not that."
Now we don't have a choice.
Now we don't have a choice, and now I'm looking at every player we're linked with and thinking, yeah, go ahead, I'll take him. I'm looking at Zapata, and someone will say to me, "Yeah, but he's had a couple of really bad injuries in the last couple of years and his form isn't great." And I'm looking thinking, but who have we got? He's surely better than what we've got, and if he's not better than what we've got, then he just adds to the pile of shite. We need a change. We need fresh faces in. We need somebody new in that can come and just change things up and refresh the squad a little bit. And it is a really, really sad state of affairs to where we're being linked with players like Marko Arnautovic, and 24 months ago, I'd have said don't go anywhere near Marco Arnautovic. Now I'm sitting here thinking, what could he do any worse than what Neil Maupay does? I mean, I was listening to Toffee TV.
We were laughing at United when they were linked with him in August or July. I think they were about to sign him.
Exactly. And now
after they lost to Brentford. Mikel Antonio, 33.
Yeah.
He's decent, but he's injury. So we're going to sign another injury-prone player.
But even
like Dominic Calvert.
Yeah, but even him, I'm looking, thinking, he's someone. Just get somebody in, get somebody through the door. Because I also think there's definitely a sort of there's a missing part of a transfer that comes in, is that gives the fans something to at least be a little bit happy about. Now, not every fan would be happy about Marco Arnautovic or Mikel Antonio, but it's something for us to grasp onto and go, all right, well, we don't know what this lad could bring. This lad might be absolutely awful, but he could have a really good 5 or 6 games and score some really important goals, and that's what we might stay up from. It's just a feel-good factor of bringing a fresh face into the team, and you're absolutely right. I remember we were linked with Marco Arnautovic, 12 months ago, and even in most recently this summer, and you're looking thinking, what are we even after him for? Why are we going for him? But we've gotten to that desperate that now every player we're being linked with is just like, yeah, go on, get him in, bring him in, or just do something to try and refresh this squad and try and bring fresh faces in. I mean, that just shows exactly.
Give us Chris Wood.
Yeah, anyone. Give us anyone. It just shows where we are as a football club and how far we've fallen. And we are on the 18th of January in the most important transfer window of the club's recent history, and Everton have currently signed nobody, and at the moment don't look in place to sign anybody. Now, of course, that could change, but they don't look in place to sign anybody yet. So we are at the point now where the clock is ticking, time's getting shorter, and I think everybody is just looking at the players we're linked with now saying, go and get them, or go and bring them in, or just do something to give us something to feed off of, because it's really, really, really negative at the moment. One thing I do just want to mention.
How's it feeling at within Liverpool? Is it quite a dire state?
Yeah.
Like I'm looking from the outside, obviously following it, but not knowing what the people are feeling actually at the stadium.
Yeah.
Is it quite toxic within the stadium?
Do you know what? That's what the media would want you to believe. That's what the board would want you to believe. That's what Bill Kenwright and Denise Barrett-Baxdale want you to believe. The atmosphere on Saturday was tainted by the letter that was released 2 hours before the game, which is absolutely disgraceful, by the way. Now, I'm not going to talk about the contents of the letter, but the timing of the letter was an absolute fucking joke, as you said. It was nothing positive was ever going to come from it. But even with that, the letter was released in the morning or early afternoon, whenever it was. Fans still turned up before the game and done the coach greeting. Fans still turned up and backed the players in the stadium. Fans still got behind the players. There wasn't a toxic atmosphere. It wasn't a case of the fans turned on the players when it went to 2-1. Now, okay, it wasn't.
No, I didn't mean it like that. I mean it just like people are probably just dejected, but as Evertonians, I guess they'll get behind him, but you can't get behind a team when they're not showing, or the manager's not showing. Like after 1-0 up, surely you make sure you flip and defend. I don't know, how can you concede at 46 minutes and it's going to turn? Like it's difficult not to.
Well, I've said it for a couple of weeks, mate. I don't think the manager's good enough. I think the manager needs to leave. I don't think he's the biggest issue with the football club. But as I've just said with signings, one thing that massively helped us last season, along with the fans and along with a certain Brazilian forward who we don't have anymore, who I think people seem to forget is now left and isn't there to save our season. One thing I also think massively helped was the change of manager, bringing Frank Lampard in, and again giving fans something to be able to get behind and grasp behind, and almost we can't blame him because he's only just come, so let's get behind him and let's fully back him. You haven't got that now. You've got fans who are saying, well, hang on, Frank Lampard's managerial record is the worst, I think, on record for any Everton manager. Frank Lampard's lost the same amount of games as what Rafa Benitez lost, or has had the same stats as what Rafa Benitez had when he was sacked. So you haven't got that. Well, he's faultless, so let's get behind him. Don't get me wrong, he's not the biggest issue with the football club, and there's certain things that, aren't his problem, and certain things that, he hasn't been able to do because he hasn't been given the utensils to do that. But it's black and white. Is as a football manager, his in-game tactics haven't been good enough this season, and the results speak for themselves. Whereas I think if you change the manager, again, almost a bit like where we were last season, you bring somebody else in and you think, well, we can't blame them because they've only just come into this, so let's get behind them, let's back them, and that might give the fans a little bit of a boost as well as a fresh player or a new forward coming in. It all sort of, again, brings the mood up a little bit. Don't get me wrong, I don't think...
I hear you, but if we do that, we just become Watford.
We do.
And
we do, but...
And then we literally that... I'm not saying stay with Frank Lampard. I just feel like it's such a shit show.
Oh, it is.
Which doesn't negate his... But what Mikel Arteta was on he lost 10 games or 8 out of 10, and I think people could still see something. With Lampard, I don't know if we have a style of play that we could get behind had to give him time. Do you understand? So I'm in two minds. Like sacking him, we just become that team like a Watford to just get rid of their manager. But keeping him in the current state, I don't know. Like I wish we could give him someone like Sam Allardyce just to like help get. No, I'm not saying bring him in. Just to not get relegated, or Sean Dyche as like, I don't know.
Yeah, I get it, and I do get the fears of, you know, people being like, oh, well, we can't just keep chopping and changing managers because that won't change the issue. Listen, the overall issue with Everton Football Club is the board. We all know that, and we all know that nothing, and by nothing I mean absolutely nothing, will change whilst that board, and for me, more importantly, that owner is still in place. I think the owner is as the biggest issue because he keeps the board in charge for the start and he hasn't got a clue. But for the short term, even if we were to replace the board, that isn't going to happen between now and the 31st of January. You know, the owner, even if he does say, I'm going to sell the club, that isn't going to happen between now and the 31st of January. So, Frank Lampard isn't the biggest issue.
We have to bring in players, like you mentioned.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the priority. But like, onto players again, we linked with these strikers, but we need someone to give them the ball. So surely we need a attacking midfielder.
Let's get one in at a time, mate. Let's solve one problem at a time here before we start going into double. You know whatever.
No, but like it doesn't. We need to score goals, but we need to create goals.
Yeah,
so
no, absolutely.
Well, do you think we have a chance of Conor Gallagher?
Well, I don't know, but we'll jump into it and we'll go through the latest of who we're being linked with and this, that, and the other, because I do think it's important. As I said, there's been a couple of names that have continuously popped up, which leads you to believe that there's more truth in those types of rumours than other names, like, you know, Conor Gallagher, for example, is one that's come up today. Let's see what happens over the next 3-4 days, whether or not that continues to pop up. But just before we go into players, I just want to read this brief article that come from Matt Law at The Telegraph. I think Jay Baird at The Telegraph as well, very reliable journalists in this country, of course. They reported that David Moyes could be sacked from West Ham if they lose their match versus Everton on Saturday, but could then become favourite to take over from Frank Lampard if Lampard is sacked. Moyes still has admirers at Everton. So if anybody has watched the latest Diary of a CEO podcast, David Moyes is actually on that podcast, and he speaks quite fondly of his relationship with Bill Kenwright and how he regrets, when he left to go to Manchester United, how he regrets not telling Bill Kenwright when he found out, because he had a great relationship with him. Listen, whenever David Moyes' name is brought up, and it's usually followed by the sentence, David Moyes still has admirers at Everton, you all know who that admirer is. It's very simple. It's not rocket science. Denise Barrett-Baxendale wasn't at that level of the football club when David Moyes was here. Neither was Grant Ingles or anybody else. So neither was Farhad Moshiri. He wasn't here when David Moyes was here. So it's Bill Kenwright. Bill Kenwright is the admirer of David Moyes. Now, the sad thing is, again, a little bit like the players argument where you're looking at players and thinking, just bring somebody in. I'm now looking at David Moyes thinking, well, is he a better manager than Frank Lampard? Could he get more out of this squad? He'd be a fresh face. He'd be something new. He'd be something that maybe the fans could get behind nostalgically. I don't know. The reality is I'm not a believer in ever going back and going to something that you once had and picking it up again and seeing if it works. And more importantly, I think we seem to be forgetting that David Moyes is about to be sacked by West Ham for the same thing as that Frank Lampard is about to be sacked by Everton for. So this is just another example of Everton being run by a circus and the ringmaster at the top of the circus being sat on a yacht somewhere in Monaco, getting his mate to write letters for him because he hasn't got a clue what's going on. I don't want to talk too much about the David Moyes thing because the reality is Frank Lampard's still the Everton manager, and again, you can never predict what this football club are going to do. You can never predict what this owner's going to do, but if there was a time for Frank Lampard to be sacked, he should have been sacked after Southampton. He should have been sacked after Brighton. He should have been sacked after Wolves. He wasn't. So what's to say he's going to get sacked if we lose to West Ham? I don't know. The reality is, if he does get sacked and David Moyes conveniently gets sacked, I wouldn't be surprised to see him become the new Everton manager. But even that, David Moyes might get a little bit more out of this current squad. He might get them fighting a little bit more. He might get them a bit more resilient. Tactically, I do think he's a better manager than Frank Lampard, but that's obvious. David Moyes has been around for a long, long, long time. Frank Lampard is still a very young football manager and clearly has got lessons to learn. The reality is, we still need players in this team.
Mate, do you think we have money to sack up the manager?
I don't know anymore, mate. I don't know. I really don't know. I honestly, I don't know. Apparently, Newcastle are interested.
I don't even think we can buy Toffee. I think we're literally waiting for a loan deal, and we're offering people cents on the dollar to come here because we can't probably put it on our books. So we're waiting to probably do a sale of Michael Keane, or someone mentioned Jordan Pickford at the end of the window. But then you're sitting with who's the current number 2, the Canadian guy?
Sorry, you've lost
me. No, I'm saying I'll keep our number 2 keeper if we sell Jordan Pickford.
Asmir Begovic.
Yeah, we can't rely on him for the fighting relegation.
Where actually makes a good point in the comments. He says, "Stop this going back, malarkey, because we've already gone further back to the point where Moyes is a big step forward," and that is probably true. To be fair, that's probably true. We've gone that far back that David Moyes is now not a step back. But listen, the reality is a lot will have had to have changed for David Moyes to have been sacked. I mean, that article itself, if you just take it in its very literal sense, states that if West Ham are to lose on the weekend, David Moyes will be sacked. So if David Moyes becomes the next Everton manager, then we can assume that Everton have won at the weekend, which is fucking brilliant because we've won a game of footy. So sound, let's just go with that. If we don't win at the weekend, then the assumption is David Moyes will still be in his job. So listen, who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? Again, I wouldn't be surprised. And at this point, he would be an improvement, and I think that is obvious to see. Whether he'd be the right option, or somebody like Dyche, or whoever else will be in the conversation, Rooney, I don't know. But the reality is as I've just said, this window is for me about bringing in players. We made the mistake last season of, not the mistake because Benitez needed to be sold, but when we sacked Benitez, we made the mistake of, instead of having a ready-made replacement ready to go there and then, we spent 3 weeks looking for one. We employed Lampard on deadline day, and the signings we brought in were pretty much effectiveless. And a good 45 minutes for Dele Alli against Crystal Palace doesn't rectify his transfer and the money that he was getting paid per week. So if we are to sack Frank Lampard,
what is your blueprint? What's your blueprint for staying up here?
My blueprint would be, I think he should be sacked, Frank Lampard. And if Everton were ran like a proper football club, if Everton were ran like they should be ran, you would have sacked him. You would then have already had your replacements in place. And I will say this, I've said this once, I'll say it 1,000,000 times, but I will say it again. You do not have to only limit yourselves to managers that are currently out of work. You can go to football clubs abroad in Europe or across the world and say, we want your money. Maybe Everton can't do that as much because of the financial situation, but in a perfect world, even if Everton had hundreds of millions of pounds to spend, I still don't think there's anybody at the football club with a brain enough to be able to think, actually, do you know what? We can go and get a manager out of a job here. We can go and pick a manager from somewhere and take them. So I do think it will be your Dyches, your Rooneys, your
Why Rooney? Rooney has done fuck all. No, he's not even he's a blue now after he's finished.
He'll be a name in the hat, won't he?
I don't know.
He'll be a name in the hat because he's a blue and because...
No, but what's he done? He didn't keep Derby up in the end. Yeah. And now at his current job, I think he's lost... I think his win percentage like 22%. So are those the type of managers we're scratching for?
I wouldn't be confident if Rooney come in, but I wouldn't be confident if Dyche come in, and I wouldn't be confident if Moyes come in that would stay up with this.
I wouldn't be comfortable if Pep Guardiola comes in.
No, I agree, and that's because of the quality of the current squad. So yeah, the Moyes stuff, we'll wait and see. But at the moment, Frank Lampard's the Everton manager, and if he was going to be sacked, then I don't see why he's still in a job now. Because they should have just sacked him after Southampton. Anyway, let's talk about some players, mate. So one name that has been constantly popping up over the course of the last week or so is Atalanta striker Duvan Zapata. So according to the Mail Sport, this was as this was as early as 4 hours ago. They said West Ham and Everton have both started talks with Atalanta striker Duvan Zapata. Zapata prefers a move to London, which isn't surprising. CM.com reported yesterday that Everton have submitted a loan bid to Atalanta for Duvan Zapata. Everton have inserted an option for a buy for €15 million. Atalanta and Zapata will now decide. Yesterday, Fabrizio Romano, who of course is a very reliable source, who a lot of people tend to be their go-to for transfer information, he said Everton are prepared to approach Atalanta to negotiate for Colombian striker Duvan Zapata. Intermediaries, that's a hard word to say when you've had a long day at work, will work on the deal with Everton open to loan with an option clause proposal. Atalanta would only be open to discuss a permanent transfer for Zapata as things stand. And as I said, the Zapata stuff has gone on for a number of days now. Constant links with him, even prior to the game against Southampton. Mark Douglas said Everton had in talks with Atalanta striker Duvan Zapata over a loan move with the option to buy this summer and are hopeful of completing the transfer. So, again, a name that has popped up a little bit over the course of the last week. One of the only names that has been a constant. If you have a look at his stats, not great this season. 12 Serie A appearances, 1 goal and 2 assists. I do believe he spent the last sort of year or two struggling with a recurring hamstring injury. So again, an injury-prone player. Obviously we're linked, of course. Why would we not be? Last season, not too bad actually. Certainly for what you compare them to currently with Everton's forwards. 24 games in Serie A, 10 goals, 5 assists. 6 games in the Champions League, 3 goals and 2 assists. So 13 goals in 30 games last season is nothing to frown upon for Evertonians, whose current goal scorer is Demarai Gray on about 4. Season before that, 37 games in Serie A, 15 goals, 10 assists. 8 games in the Champions League, 3 goals, 2 assists. So over the last 3 years, it would certainly show to be an improvement on what we've got currently. Now, obviously, the question is, could he come and do it in the Premier League? I don't think he's played in the Premier League before. I could be wrong. Yeah. No, he hasn't played in the Premier League before. And also whether or not he'd be able to stay injury-free and whether or not he'd be able to stay relatively fit enough to be the saviour of Everton's season. I mean, his overall stats, he's played 260, get 9 games in the Serie A and scored 107 goals in those. So that's, 1 in 2.5, 1 in 2 games, something like that, which is significantly better than anything we've got currently at the football club. What do you think, mate? Are you in my sort of camp of he's a fresh face, he's new, and he's a striker, so go and get him in? Or are you a little bit more cautious, given some of the reports, as the reports are suggesting, that Atalanta are wanting a permanent deal, and obviously that permanent deal could be around €15 million, whether or not that is paid now or whether or not that's paid over the course of the next 55 years because Everton are skint, I don't know. But what's your overall feeling on Duvan Zapata, and would he be somebody you'd like to see come through the door?
To be honest, I don't know much about him, so I don't. Yeah, I see he's 31, so obviously there's no sell-on value.
No.
Should we get them? But I guess we're not in a position to buy that. If we can get a loan for someone with a bit of experience, and or buy a younger guy, not 21, but someone like 25, 26 at least. They have some experience and you have a bit of leeway. But obviously we're not in a position, and we strongly linked with him and Danjuma. Think I guess I don't know, because he's injury prone this season with 1 goal. I don't know how prolific he's going to be trying to settle into the Premier League. So I'd stay away of this one.
Yeah, fair enough. For me, as I said, it's very difficult for me to talk about footballers and strikers and players being linked with Everton at the moment, because I am very, very, very much the camp of sorry, I'm just seeing people in the comments talking about Everton potentially signing Declan Rice, and then I've just realised it's actually people saying they'd love Declan Rice and not Everton have been linked with Declan Rice because I've just nearly had a heart attack. I am of the view of we need a forward. And yes, his stats this season haven't been great, and as I said, yes, he has suffered with a reoccurring injury, which means he would fit right into Everton as strikers with not great stats who have suffered reoccurring injuries. But if he can shake that injury, he could come in and maybe get back to that form of last season, because 10 goals, and I don't know, listen, I know the Italian league isn't anywhere near as competitive as the Premier League, and I know it's a much easier league to be able to, to do well in. But if he could hit them stats,
he just needs 5 goals.
Five goals would be absolutely perfect if he could bring that 5-6 goals. Obviously, like every deal that Everton will be trying to do over the course of the next 10 days, it will depend on the way it's structured. It will depend on the way it's financed, and as I said, that latest rumour there coming from the Mail states that West Ham are also interested, which isn't a shock because West Ham are trying to get rid of their forward in Mikel Antonio, and Everton apparently are linked with him as well. But also West Ham are in a similar position to Everton, and the old London over Liverpool sort of situation. We've heard it before. We heard it with Giroud last time. In one of Farhad Moshiri's first transfer windows. It might have been before Farhad Moshiri, actually, when Roberto Martinez was here. We were heavily linked with Olivier Giroud, and he chose London over Liverpool, and that isn't unusual for players to do that.
I've visited you in Liverpool. I prefer Liverpool, man.
There you go. Thank you. Liverpool is a much better place. I don't care what anybody says. Liverpool is a much nicer and much better city, but footballers that have never been in this country prefer that capital sort of high life of London. But who knows? Listen, Amadou Onana had an option to go to West Ham this summer, and chose Everton, and obviously living in the city of Liverpool over that. So money talks, and if Everton can offer him a little bit more money, or Everton can offer him a bit more assurance, then maybe he'll take that pick. But as I said, I would assume that this deal will be dependent on how it is structured. West Ham might say, listen, we'll pay you the 15 million now and we'll have him on a permanent, and Atalanta might go, well, Everton can't afford to do that. You want him on loan and then to pay us the money over the course of 2 or 3 years, so we'll go with West Ham. Who knows? We'll wait and see. But he is better than what we've got, or certainly statistically on paper he's better than what we've got. Whether or not he'd be able to come in and hit the ground running is another thing, and we'll have to wait and see. But certainly an interesting link. Another forward we've been linked with, again according to the Mail, Everton have been offered Lyon striker Moussa Dembélé. Now again, this isn't the first time Everton have been linked with Moussa Dembélé. Santi JFM reported yesterday that Everton are interested in Lyon striker Moussa Dembélé. The 26-year-old Frenchman has 6 months left on his contract, but Everton may make an offer this transfer window. And there's been another couple of reports over the last week or so regarding Moussa Dembélé. Obviously, currently playing for Lyon. Again, his stats this season aren't great. 14 games there, 2 goals and 1 game in the Coupe de France, with no goals and 1 assist in that one. If you have a little look at last season's statistics,
it was quite a good season.
Yeah, he scored 21 goals, 4 goals, bloody hell. He scored 21 goals with 4 assists last season in 30 games. 21 goals in 30 games in Ligue 1, with 6 games played in the Europa League and 1 goal in the Europa League. So 36 games overall and 22 goals, which is absolutely phenomenal. If Everton could get him back to anywhere near that level of form. Obviously the 2 goals in 14 this season isn't great, but again, when you looked at last season, there's definitely potential there. Season before, 16 games, 1 goal, so he's had one really, really good season in the last 3. Again, much younger, 26 years old, of course. So again, at a good age. Injuries.
We were meant to have him in 2016 when we signed Omar Niasse.
Yeah, which again, whether it be Funes Mori over Van Dijk, whether it be Niasse over Dembele, whether it be, I don't know, Giroud, and instead of Giroud we probably signed somebody shite that season as well. I don't know, Sanzo Ramirez, there you go. But overall, 159 games for Lyon, 69 goals, and 19 assists. Of course, he's at Fulham previously as well, 64 games, 19 goals, 9 assists. Had a spell at Celtic as well, 94 games and 51 goals. So his goal scoring record is actually not awful, and certainly if he could get to anywhere near the level he was at last season, then we would have some player on our hands. Of course, the big thing in this sort of rumour is he is in the last few months of his contract, and I think if Everton are to get him, they will try and prey on that, maybe pay Lyon a small fee to get him out of that contract, given that he will walk for a free in the summer. This would be again, it would be a risk. It would be a risk because obviously he hasn't had the greatest of seasons so far, but he again, much like Zapata, this is the ultimate, the market that we're dealing in, isn't it? It's players that aren't particularly having great seasons. Listen, if Moussa Dembélé was where he was last season, 10, 11 goals, 12 goals already, he wouldn't be being linked with Everton, who are about to, enter another relegation battle, that's for certain. So what are your thoughts on him? Is he somebody that you'd maybe turn your attention to more a little bit because of his age and etc.?
Yeah, no, I think I prefer him to the other guy. I've seen him play. He's quite a mobile forward that has quite a good eye for goal. I don't know the reasons he hasn't played. Has he not played much, or has he been injured? But if we can get the best out of him with some decent service, I think he's a better option. If he would like to come, because he's 26, and obviously if he doesn't work out, hopefully you can still get some money for him, or like a Dele Alli type of vibe, because we didn't lose that much money or pay much money for Dele Alli.
Yeah.
So if we can get something out of him, I think this is quite a good move.
Yeah, but he's had 14 games this season, scored 2 goals as I said, and got 1 assist in the cup. So not great statistically. As far as injuries go, nothing too recent other than an injury in what I can only assume is October, because the date on transfer market is flipped the other way around. An injury in October, a strain in the thigh and gluteal muscles. But since then, he did actually miss the last 2 games for Lyon. He was on the bench, so he's obviously out of form. He's obviously in a little bit of a sticky situation at the moment, and being in his last sort of...
But Lyon is also doing... Lyon, I see per the log, they're 9th. So I don't know if he's part of the problem, or if the problem lies elsewhere in terms of creating chances.
Yeah,
so
maybe.
Maybe
he's also in the last few months of his contract, so maybe he's at that point now where he's just thinking, I want something new, I want a fresh change. But it is interesting how good he was last season, and the fact that he still didn't sign a new contract or get a big move last summer. I'm not too sure what that's about. But listen, obviously he's much younger than Zapata. He's at a much better age, and he would probably be less of a risk. But again, we are currently sitting with our best goal threat being Demarai Gray, who turns up once every 3 months and scores a worldie, and that's about it. So I don't think many of us could turn our nose at Moussa Dembélé or Duvan Zapata for that matter. You mentioned him before. According to Mail Sports, Everton have inquired for Chelsea's Conor Gallagher, but he has no desire to leave Chelsea. Nottingham Forest, Southampton, Crystal Palace and Newcastle United have all also inquired. I can't see this one happening. If I'm being perfectly honest with you, I would absolutely love Conor Gallagher. I think he would be brilliant. I think he had a fantastic season at Crystal Palace last season. I think he's a good young lad with a good head on his shoulders, wants to work hard, wants to get his head down, wants to fight for the shirt, wants to battle, isn't afraid of, hard work and commitment. But the reality is, firstly, as that report states, he's not in any rush to leave Chelsea, and he doesn't want to leave Chelsea. But also, secondly, I think if Chelsea were to make him available on a loan deal or whatever it may be, I think there would be other...
Probably wants to go back to Palace.
Yeah, even if it was Palace or Newcastle or even Forest, who, maybe aren't in as...
Not a chance Forest is getting him.
But Forest are financially in a much better situation than what Everton are. So Everton are far down that path of options. The only way Conor Gallagher would come to Everton is if he genuinely wanted to come to Everton. It wouldn't be a case of, I'll weigh up my options and see what's best. Oh, Everton's best because, as I said, Palace, he's been there before and he's got that connection. Newcastle are flying at the moment, and that'd be a good move for him. Forest would be able to give him £7 million a week because that's what they do with players. Everton would be bottom of that list, I think, for Conor Gallagher, as devastating as that is, and it shouldn't be, because Everton are a bigger club than Newcastle and Forest and not Chelsea. Well, they are a bigger club than Chelsea, Palace, etc. But that's just what we are. That's just where we are. Conor Gallagher would be great because, as you mentioned before, I've said this numerous times and I agree with you, there's very little point having an unbelievable striker if you've got nobody to give him service, if you've got no creators in there to create for him. And Conor Gallagher would offer that, but Conor Gallagher's not going to come to Everton this January transfer window. In fact, I'm that confident I'll get his initials tattooed on me if he does come to Everton this transfer window, because I know it's not.
So we're not allowed to. So everyone goes on about the fact that we've spent 600 million in 7 years. Fuck, it's been 600 million for the last 2 years. It's been fucking zero.
Yeah.
But Chelsea spends 420 in one window, and that's fine. Like, what bullshit is this?
I'm having people message me saying, you can't moan about your board, Cam. You can't moan about your owner. He spent 600 million in this time. I'm saying, but that's exactly why I'm moaning. That's why I'm moaning, because he spent 600 million in 6 years and we're fighting relegation again. That's exactly why we're all fucking moaning, because he's wasted it. He's pissed it up the wall. Anyway.
Yeah, but I'm saying, like, that 600 million is now irrelevant because it was 600 million after 5 years.
Yeah.
Now it's been 600 million after 7 years. Like, get rid of that. Everyone spends money. I know we fucked it about, but I mean, like, fucking other clubs, it's bullshit that we can't spend it. I don't know if he wants to spend it. And if you give it to him, he'll probably spend it on shit. But I mean, just give us the chance to spend some money, man.
Yeah.
Fucking hell.
I agree. So, yeah, Conor Gallagher is probably not going to join Everton, let's be honest. One today, according to Sport Bild, who are a German sport publication of some form, they have said that Everton are interested in signing Niklas Füllkrug from Werder Bremen. The German striker also has interest in Borussia Mönchengladbach and Hoffenheim, and apparently he said he wants to join a top club like Manchester United. Werder Bremen wants €20 million. Again, I think this is listen, Everton will be linked with, or Everton will be interested in, a whole load of players over the course of this January transfer window, and 99% of them Everton will not bring in, maybe even 100% of them, because we have seemingly nothing is happening at the moment. I think this is a fine example of that. Again, Frank Lampard has said numerous times in interviews that Everton are looking to strengthen in attacking areas and Everton are looking to bring in more attacking options. He is probably just the name that has popped up in the list of players that Everton could potentially make a move for, but I highly doubt. Certainly if there's no option for a loan or anything like that, I don't think Everton are forking up €20 million to sign a player that has basically just said, I want to go to somebody like Manchester United. But we've been linked with him, so...
Is Omar Niasse still available?
No, he's retired, hasn't he, Omar Niasse? Has he retired? I don't know. Marco Conterio reported yesterday that he works for Tutto Mercato Web, who are not the most reliable source in the world. He reported yesterday that Everton are in talks with Bologna over a move for forward Marko Arnautovic, which is interesting, obviously formerly of West Ham United, formerly of Stoke City. This is when I was talking yesterday, mate, about players being linked with Everton that formerly you would turn your nose up at and say, I don't want anywhere near the club, that now you sort of think, fuck it, bring him in. Marko Arnautovic is of that for me. I don't think he'd be the most amazing signing. I think his attitude is questionable, and I think his performances in the Premier League are questionable. But he is capable of scoring the odd goal or two, and the odd goal or two might be the difference between Everton staying up and not staying up this season. What do you feel on Marko Arnautovic? Do you agree, or do you think it's somebody Everton should stay well away from?
No, I'm with you, and I think he's a bit of a shithousery.
Yeah.
That when he plays with you, you probably want him on your team, and he's proven with West Ham that he is quite a decent striker in the Premier League and with Stoke. So I think he scores like 10 to 12 or 10 to 13 goals a season, which we probably only need about 5 or 6. Well, I'm not saying we need, but I mean, if we can get 5 or 6 out of him, I'm just worried about supplying the supply line for these strikers, because we can't get from back to front. properly, and we've lost that ability to cross the ball from Lucas Dean and, well, back in the day, Seamus Coleman. So that for me is a bit of that's a bit of an
that
issue.
is back in the day, that, mate. That's going back.
I'm just saying from the right hand side, we had Dijbril Zadibe for that got about 5 assists the one season, but we haven't used the right hand side much for crosses. It's mostly been the left hand side with Digne. So if we can get some service to him, I think he'll be a decent option.
Yeah, I agree. But listen, again, whether or not it happens is another question, and we'll wait and see if that one progresses. We are flying through these, and that's because the majority of them I just don't believe. The Zapata one and the Moussa Dembélé one, I think, have got substance to them. The others, I think, are just paper talk at the moment. Mark Douglas also reported that Newcastle United winger Ryan Fraser has been offered to Everton. Now, this is something I do believe, because this is something I think Everton will look to more. Players that are currently not happy at their current club, maybe not getting in the team, maybe not doing too well, maybe not working, and their agents are looking for them to get a move elsewhere, and the club that they currently at aren't particularly that bothered about them moving. Ryan Fraser fits into that category for me. He's played 8 games in the Premier League this season for Newcastle, no goals or assists, 1 yellow card. He's obviously a sticky winger, fast, small, compact, somebody that can run at players, somebody that could potentially take a player on, dare I say. Everton sign a winger that can take a player on. 28 years old, of course, so again his age is not ideal, but the position that we're in isn't ideal. 27 games in the Premier League, 2 goals and 3 assists last season, so stats aren't particularly great, and obviously he's completely out of favour at Newcastle now, given the new sort of investments and the fact that they're fighting for the Champions League now, which is baffling and is a complete show, by the way, of just how quickly things can turn around at a football club, because this time last year Newcastle were going down, and they were going down without a fight, and then all of a sudden new owners come in, and within a year they're fighting for European football. So that just shows how quickly things can change.
So that's us next season, eh?
Well, let's get rid of these clowns that are in charge first, and then we can only hope that the people that come in actually understand what they're doing with football. But Ryan Fraser, again, not a particularly exciting player to be linked with, not somebody that we're all going to sit here and have a party about, but the type of player that you expect.
No, I think I'll take him.
Yeah,
he's always done quite well. I think he's done quite well against us.
He has.
People wrote off Almiron. People wrote off JC Lingard, and look what JC did for West Ham, and Almiron is doing for Newcastle. So I think I'd actually take Fraser, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree, and you're right. I mean, I said this when we were linked with Danny Ings not so long ago. One of my biggest plus points for bringing Danny Ings in is that, well, at least he won't score against us, because he scores against us every time he plays against us. But Ryan Fraser, very similarly, always does well against Everton. Again, it's a bit difficult for him, because it's not easy to be at a football club and then that football club be taken over, and all of a sudden within the course of a couple of months you have completely become surplus to requirements, because the players that are coming in around you are of a much better quality and of the choice of the current manager as opposed to the previous manager. Again, he's not somebody that if we sign I'm going to be going out in the street and opening a bottle of rosé about and screaming and shouting about, but he is another option, and as I said, we are in a position at the moment where we can't really afford to be turning our noses up at these types of players. And if Ryan Fraser could come in for little to nothing, which I would assume he would do, because I don't see why Newcastle would be desperate to, keep him for any reason, then that might be a positive. The Mail Sport are throwing all sorts of transfer rumours out in regards to Everton at the moment. They reported yesterday, again, that Everton have inquired to Ron, or Rennes, or Rennes, or however you want to say it, Ron, about taking winger Kamaldeen Sulemana on an initial loan deal. Everton held talks with Arnaut Danjuma on the weekend. Nottingham Forest and Bournemouth have also held talks with Danjuma. As far as Danjuma is concerned, I believe he has been in England over the course of the last few days to hold talks with English clubs. Everton, I can only assume, are one of them clubs. We know Bournemouth are quite heavily linked with them as well, and certain reports are suggesting Bournemouth are leading that race. Apparently He will be back in England over the course of the next couple of days to continue them talks, and it is basically about him making a decision on where he wants to go and who he wants to play for. Again, the Danjuma stuff, I think he'd be a good signing. I think he'd be an improvement. I think he would help us massively in our quest of staying up, because he's a winger that can come in, create chances, score goals. But he might also be looking at clubs like Bournemouth and thinking, do you know what, I'm maybe a little bit more, but a bit more secure there, considering the position Everton are in.
Well, he's been there.
Yeah.
He had a season in the Championship with them.
Yeah, and again, statistically, we'll have a little look at his stats before we move on. To my favourite website in the world, Transfer Market. 10 games this season for Villarreal, 2 goals, 5 games in the Conference League, 2 goals, and 2 games in the Copa del Rey, 2 goals. So overall, 6 goals in 17 games this season for them.
I just saw something, sorry. Things that Everton are interested in. Anyone that breathes.
Yeah.
Being able to play football isn't necessarily needed.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. It's true. 23 games yet last season in La Liga, and 10 goals with 3 assists for Danjuma, 11 in the Champions League with 6 goals. So, he's he would very much be an improvement to what Everton currently have, which, as you've just mentioned then, isn't saying much. I'm not confident, if I'm being honest with you. I'm not confident, because I just think that there's other teams on the table, and I think he would maybe look at those other teams and think, do you know what? And listen, obviously Everton are a much bigger club than Bournemouth or a number of other clubs he's been linked with. But the reality is, for footballers in this day and age, he's likely to go where the money is. Can Bournemouth offer him more than Everton? Well, considering their owner has just literally bought a football club, I'm going to assume they're in a better financial position than what Everton are. The other lad Everton have been linked with, Kamaldeen Sulema, of course, 20 years old, left winger. Ghanaian, of course, from Rons, as I said, 13 games this season, 1 goal in League 1. Obviously, it's only 20 years old, so again, that is something to consider. Last season, he had 20 games, 4 goals and 2 assists, so certainly one for the future. Fabrizio Romano reporting that that he's open to leaving Rennes in January, and Everton are exploring a loan with a buy clause. Bournemouth and Augsburg are also interested and have asked about him due to his lack of game time. Listen, this is what's going to happen, isn't it? Every player Everton are linked with are going to be linked with other clubs, and certainly Bournemouth. But Bournemouth seems to be. Hang on, City's talking to me in my ear. Do me a favour, City, piss off. Bournemouth seem to be being linked with everybody we're linked with at the moment, which is interesting, probably because they're likely be in a similar position to what Everton will be come the end of the season. But Danjuma, is he somebody you'd have in, and somebody you'd look forward to welcoming if he decided to come to Everton?
I don't know. I just saw his stats in the Premier League 2019-20. He played 14 games and 0 goals, 0 assists.
Yeah,
so
perfect.
I don't know. Like, he played well in the Championship the following season, but maybe he's just more suited to that a bit lower level. But I guess Villarreal, he's done quite well.
Yeah.
So, maybe. Can he cross the ball? That's all we need. Can we just have Andros Townsend back? Because I think he can actually deliver the ball.
What a desperate state of affairs that we're asking for Andros Townsend back. What a desperate.
But you agree with me? You can deliver a ball.
I absolutely do agree with you, and that's why it's a desperate state of affairs. I'd have loved to have sat here and gone, no, let's not get Andros, but I actually agree with you. That's about it, I think, for signings. I mean, Everton have been linked with 752 other players, but nothing will come of them. And we will probably.
So it's Michy Batshuayi at deadline day.
Michy, yeah. You know what? I've said that for weeks, to be honest. I've said that. Keep your eye on Michy Batshuayi or Dele Alli. Keep your eye on either of them two. Whammy says, no Everton Jesus sort of starting 11 out first. We keep buying cherries and the cake still in Asda in its individual components. That's a belter shout. That is a belter shout. But I'd like to know what cherries we've bought, to be honest with you. I think the cherries we're buying are out of date and not very nice. Whammy also says, that's true. Your goalkeeper would probably walk in, kicked it, and I don't know what that's about. David says, I bet you we get Sean Longstaff. I don't think so. I think that's even gone now, considering how well Newcastle are doing. Is Vinagre that bad? I don't even know what's happened to Vinagre. He's not even been on the bench recently, has he? Whether it's his attitude, whether or not he just isn't doing it in training, I don't know. But it is questionable considering Mikalenko has been really, really, really poor recently. Alex, as we're talking
I've
about
never rated
managers.
him that much.
No. Alex says we're talking about managers, but with the current regime, there's no future for us. So whatever, bring Moyes in, not going to make much of a difference. Well, as I said, nothing will make much of a difference until this board is being dismantled and we've brought people in that actually know what they're doing and actually know how to run a football club. But that still doesn't mean that we should sit on our hands and watch it all unfold. We need to make changes in the short term, because if we don't, then we are steamrolling towards relegation. But anyway, we're going to leave it there. That's pretty much everybody we've been linked with. I'm sure we'll have another one of these transfer streams over the course of the next couple of weeks or so, and I'm sure we'll have Cornet back to discuss more about how he feels currently about the football club and what is currently going on. But thanks very much for joining us, mate. Really appreciate it. Anything you want to say before we dart?
I might see you for the Arsenal game.
Okay, you coming down?
Yes, but I need to decide if it's worth
well,
it.
I can tell you now it won't be worth it, because we'll lose. In fact, we'll lose quite heavily, but that's on you. That's your choice.
No, my mate is an Arsenal fan, and he wants to go, so
Okay,
we'll see.
perfect. Well, listen, you know what to do if you're down, mate. Give me a shoot, and we'll go for a pint. And listen, we're not going to get anything out of that game. I'm done even trying to be positive, to be honest with you. I can't even sit here and go, oh, you never know. It will be a bloodbath, but we'll make a day of it. Don't forget to go and check out Cornet and everywhere that he is, and obviously leave your lovely comments down below. Cornet, I'm sure, will be back on the channel over the course of the next week or so. But anyway, big thank you all for watching. Don't forget to leave a like if you have enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. If you watch live, big thanks to everybody for watching. And if you're watching as a YouTube video, leave your thoughts down below. Massive thank you all for watching, and we'll see you later.